Hello and welcome to Run Testers, my name's Nick, and in this video we're going to be comparing the Brooks Glycerin 22 and the Asics Gel-Nimbus 27. So the Brooks Glycerin 22 and the Asics Gel-Nimbus 27 are both very popular, high-end, cushioned, neutral running shoes that have been going for a long time, as you can tell by the numbers at the end of their name, and prove very popular with newer runners or any runner really looking for a really nice cushioned shoe to crank out easy miles in particular. Gel-Nimbus is the more expensive shoe in the UK at least. It's £180 and $165, whereas the Brooks Glycerin 22 is £165 or $165. They are pretty similar in weight, but the Gel-Nimbus is a slightly heavier shoe. It's 314 grams or 11 ounces. In the UK 9, whereas the Glycerin 22 is 308 grams or 10.8 ounces. You have an 8mm drop on the Asics and a 10mm drop on the Brooks, and the Asics is the slightly higher stack shoe. It hits 43.5mm at the heel. Comes to the design, you've got a jacquard mesh upper on the Asics Gel-Nimbus 27. You've got a lot of padding around the heel, as you might expect for a shoe like this, but then the tongue isn't super padded, which is a little bit different to lots of other shoes, including the Glycerin 22. You've got sidewalls of foam and a big internal heel counter to create kind of a bucket seat and more stability at the back of the shoe. Then the midsole is made from Asics' FF Blast Plus Eco foam, and you've got a pure gel insert under the heel as well. It's a pretty balanced foam, but mostly skews towards comfort, as you'd expect of a shoe of this type. Then you've got an Asics grip rubber outsole. The coverage is not very extensive. You've actually got better coverage on the Brooks, I would say, but the key impact areas on the Asics are covered. Then with the Glycerin 22, you've got a double jacquard knit upper on the shoe. You've got lots of padding on the tongue, which is different to the Asics, and a fair bit around the heel collar as well. Big internal heel counter to add structure and stability there. Then you've got a DNA-tuned midsole, which is a nitrogen-infused midsole foam. This is the big upgrade for the Glycerin 22 compared to the Glycerin 21. It's a dual density foam which allows Brooks to use larger cells of foam at the back of the shoe to create a more soft and comfortable landing, and then smaller cells at the front to create a more responsive feel to your toe-offs. And then you've got a rubber outsole with good coverage, like I say, a little bit of exposed foam there, but certainly slightly better coverage than you get on the Asics, and it's a thicker layer as well.
So the fit for me in both of these shoes, I have a size 8 in both of these shoes, which is my UK size, and I found both of these to be pretty comfortable shoes to wear. The Glycerin 22, solid all-round comfortable shoe, good level of padding in it, plenty of space in the forefoot and around the side of the shoe. Glycerins I've always found them to be a very good fit and a very plush feeling shoe as well. So I'd definitely say to my size in the Glycerin 22, no issues at all in that. Pretty similar for the Gel-Nimbus 27 actually. Size 8 in UK, fits me perfectly, good bit of padding on it. Only things I would say about the Gel-Nimbus 27 is that it's a little bit longer, but I don't think long enough to justify going down a size. It fits perfectly well, and for some people it's probably the sort of amount of space you want in it anyway. The other thing I'll say about the Gel-Nimbus 27 is I'm not a big fan of the tongue. It's a bit harder to get a lockdown fit with it because it's quite thin and can roll up a little bit when you're trying to do up the shoe. So all in all, both very comfortable shoes, and I stick to my size in both of them.
Quick word on fit then, and I think both of these I would describe as kind of roomy and spacious. The Nimbus 27 is a lot more airy into this kind of toe box area, a lot more wiggle room across the top. There's a bit more space down the end. This is a really roomy shoe in terms of length. You can see my big toe only comes up to here. Lots of room towards the end. There's also lots of clearance here around the toes to the side here. The toe knuckles are held, and it's held across the foot here, but it's not tight. It just feels nicely wrapped. If you go into the Glycerin, it's a sort of similar feel actually. It feels a little bit lower and closer to the toes across the top of the box here from the mesh uppers. There's still a good amount of clearance there actually, not quite as much as the Nimbus, but it's still a decent thumb's length in my regular size. I get really nice hold back into the sort of top of the foot here. It feels really comfortable, very disappearing. Up through the tongues, you've got a nice big plush padded tongue from the Glycerin 22. The Nimbus 27, a bit of a sort of more flat, kind of flimsy knitted tongue, but both of them feel comfortable. And then into the heel collars, they hold really nice and well, both of them do here. A little bit more kind of low profile, a little bit more minimal here maybe on the Glycerin 22, but overall I had no problems going true to size in both of these shoes, and that's what I'd recommend.
When it comes to the fit of the two shoes, I've got a UK 9 in both of these, which is a US 10 with these brands. That is the size I've used across the Asics and Brooks range for many years, and indeed many previous models of both of these shoes, and they fit me very well in that size. Got enough room in the toe box, good hold around the heel and midfoot, a lot of padding around the back of the shoe, which sometimes I don't love too much. It can irritate my Achilles a little bit sometimes, but I haven't had that problem with these shoes at all. The Asics has probably got the slightly roomier upper in terms of width around the forefoot, which I've noticed to someone with a narrow foot, but hasn't been a problem for me, and they both come in a range of widths. So I think most runners are going to be able to find a comfortable fit with both of these shoes, and just purely on sizing, I would stick to your normal running shoe size.
Both of these shoes are pretty similar for what you're going to use these for. They're both daily cushion shoes, a lot of foam in these shoes, and they are long. They're a long line of shoes that have seen quite big changes over the past few versions. The thing about these shoes is that they're not particularly versatile shoes. I'd say they're pretty much shoes really designed for those easy day runs, possibly longer runs if you're not going at a fast pace. I wouldn't use these for marathon training if I was meant to be maintaining a marathon pace or something close to that. I would use them purely for easy runs of any distance, really. I think they'll both be absolutely fine for that. The other thing I'd say about these shoes is that they're both pretty stable for me. I think the Glycerin 22 is probably a little bit more stable just because of the way that foam geometry is designed, but they're both pretty stable shoes all round when it comes to having this level of stacking. And I think that comes down to the fact that the midsole in both of these shoes is a pretty well balanced midsole. It's not that neither is really soft, so you're getting a pretty similar ride in both of them. I think the real difference in these shoes comes from the ride based on the geometry of them. So the Gel-Nimbus 27, I have a bit of problem running in this shoe for quite a lot of runs. So if I'm out doing an easy run or recovery run, absolutely fine. I'm not really expecting anything from it in the way of energy return or smooth transition. But I hit this midsole right in the middle, and it's feels quite flat to me when you hit the ground. It's quite slappy as well. But what I find with this is that I'm not really getting anything that helps me run for a longer distance. Definitely not faster, because it sort of hits the ground and then I pick the shoe up and go up again, which is fine if you're just doing an easier and a recovery run. But if you're going to do a longer session and you're trying to maintain a comfortable pace for that, I do find it harder to do in the Gel-Nimbus 27. So the Glycerin 22 has a much better geometry for me, so I do find it rolls it forward a little bit more. The midsole is still pretty, it's a little bit firmer than I would normally go for in a shoe, especially one that I was doing longer distance training in. I really like the Brooks Glycerin Max because it has a bit more of this foaming, but it has more of a rolling action in it, so it smoothly glides you forward with a little bit more energy return as well. But I think the real thing about the Glycerin 22 is that balance. It's got really good stability in it, so it's great for beginners, great for people who maybe are doing a lot of running and maybe need some slight stability, but don't want to go all out for a full-on stability shoe. It's just a really, it ticks a lot of boxes for things like that. But all in all, I think they're pretty similar shoes for a lot of things. And if you don't have that geometry issue with me that I have, you might get on with the Gel-Nimbus 27 a little bit better if you just want a little bit more foam, because it is noticeably a tiny bit softer than the Glycerin 22, but not massively. So I'd use these for the same things. It's quite tricky versus actually. The outsole on these shoes, fantastic outsole on the Glycerin 22. Really thick layer of rubber on this, really good at gripping. I've done a lot of running down footpaths and gravel paths in the wet in this, and it's absolutely great. No issues at all, and it's a little bit of exposed midsole on it, but the rubber is so thick that it's quite hard to get to that, so I think it's a pretty durable shoe. Gel-Nimbus 27, not as good an outsole. It does have a fair bit of rubber on it, but it's not a very thick layer of it, so there's this really big midsole section here that's exposed, and I've started to wear it down a little bit. This is on about 50k of running. It's not any major signs of wear and tear on it, but that rubber is not very far away from it, so if you start wearing this rubber down, I think you're going to start having an impact on that midsole foam. So I think the outsole is much better on the Glycerin 22.
So in testing, I've run 45 miles in the Brooks Glycerin 22, slightly less in the Asics Gel-Nimbus 27, and I've put these shoes through a mix of paces, mostly on the road, with some light off-road bundled in, the usual test miles that we do in them. Now, if you watch the channel a lot, you'll know I'm fond of shoes that offer a good balance of cushion and protection, but without being too soft or putting too much shoe on the foot. Things like the Saucony Ride 17, the Nike Pegasus 41, the Puma Velocity Nitros, all of those fall into that bracket, and I think the Glycerin 22 joins that list. I think this is a capable, versatile shoe that's nicely balanced, with good cushioning but a lower profile compared to some of the bigger shoes that we're now seeing, including this one, and you get a good response from this shoe to boot. It's perhaps not quite as soft, or at least there's less stack than you'll get in the Asics Gel-Nimbus 27, but I can happily do the same easy miles in the same comfort in both of these shoes. Some might find they want a bit more cush between them and the road for their easiest of runs, and the Nimbus certainly offers that kind of volume of stack underfoot, though I don't feel there's a huge difference in the overall softness when I'm up and moving kind of mid to forefoot. Either way, I'll trade some of that top level plushness underfoot for a shoe that can go up through the gears, and I think Brooks has made that shoe in the Glycerin 22. When it comes to Nimbus 27, this is textbook Nimbus. It's a big platform that's reliable, it's sort of softer, more cushioned without adding extra weight over the 26. That's a trend that we're going to see a lot of as the stack heights rise with the new light performance foams coming across the shoe lineups into 2025. For me, the Nimbus is limited on versatility though. I'd only use it for my slowest runs, and that's still the case with this 27 iteration. It wasn't great at marathon pace, just a bit too heavy and sluggish. On stability, I found both shoes nicely reliable, no problems there. On durability, I think both shoes have handled the test miles that I've done very well so far, with little signs of wear and tear, and they look built to soak up the good mileage.
On to the run test then, and I've logged somewhere around 60k in both of these shoes. They're both impressive cushioned daily trainers, I would say. I think neither are exactly wow shoes, but they are very much shoes that will do a good job in serving runners of all levels. They're going to be very durable, they're very comfortable for sure. While they're not necessarily exactly my kind of shoes, I don't tend to go for big cushion shoes like this, even for my easy runs. They are shoes that will appeal to a lot of runners, and I think they do a good job in living up to the standards set by each of their lines. If you're a fan of the Glycerin or a fan of the Nimbus in general, I think you're going to like the latest models of both of these shoes. Of the two shoes, the Glycerin 22 is the one that's had the bigger change compared to its previous model, with this new DNA tuned midsole, which replaces the DNA Loft V3 foam we saw in the Glycerin 21. Now, that was also a nitrogen infused EVA foam, but got this dual density nitrogen infused foam in the Glycerin 22, and it does create a slightly different ride. I think you get a softer landing in the Glycerin 22 than you did in the Glycerin 21. As a heel striker, do like the soft foam at the back of this shoe, and it does transition pretty well. And it's, it's a reasonably responsive top. Like, this is not a very lively shoe, one that you're going to be picking out to do a lot of fast running in, I don't think, but the way the midsole is set up does make it a pretty solid daily trainer that can handle a little bit of up-tempo stuff here and there. Then the Asics, I think, is quite similar. Like, even though this is really much more geared to comfort, I think you've got a slightly wider shoe, a shoe that's got a bit more stability about it than the Brooks, even though the Brooks is also very stable. I think it is a shoe that does have a little bit of versatility to it because it's got quite a stiff midsole setup. Like, it might even be a bit surprising when you first put it on that it doesn't feel as cushy and flexible as some shoes that you might find in this category. I think it does push you through onto your toes quite well, and while again it's not a shoe that I would really consider very speedy or one I'd really love to do lots of speed work in, I think it can handle the rigours of daily training with some slight progression runs and up-tempo efforts here and there. And then you've mostly got a very comfortable shoe, certainly at the heel, which has got that big wedge of foam, which does feel very comfortable to me as a heel striker, and has been smoothed out, I think, with the Gel-Nimbus 27 compared to previous models, in that I find the transition from heel to toe a little bit better on this new shoe. Did do a short run wearing both shoes at the same time, and they do have quite a similar feeling, certainly when you hit the landing spot at the back of the shoe. Both very comfortable, both cushioned, both move you quite well through onto your midfoot and then forefoot. I think you've got a slightly smoother ride with the Asics, and it is more of a rocket shoe, but it's also a slappy shoe because of the way the outsole is set up. It's quite a hard material. You do get a bit of a slapping sensation there, and actually over the course of longer runs, if you are moving at speed, I think it does reduce the forefoot comfort of the shoe a little bit, but you have got more foam there than you have on the Brooks, and I do think it's a slightly more comfortable shoe because of that. Brooks has a very classic ride now, a really traditional ride with a high drop, snaps through, just works very well. It is still really comfortable, and if you've been a fan of the line before, I think you're going to enjoy what you get from the Brooks Glycerin 22. Maybe the Asics is the one that's a little bit more in line with trends in the modern running shoe market, with a bit more of a rocker and more forefoot cushioning in particular.
Verdict then, I think you've got two well-cushioned, capable daily trainers here, reliable workhorses really. In the general scheme of running shoes, I'd say the Asics Nimbus 27 performs better at the slower and easier rather than the faster paces. It's that kind of shoe. They're good at what they do though, but they have limited versatility. It kind of does reliability and road protection very well on the low pace runs in a classic Nimbus way, but I struggle to get it out of first gear due to the general heft of the shoe. Now, if all you need is smooth, protective road eating comfort for your easiest miles, that's fine. Go for this Nimbus 27. But if you want a shoe that can do that and can tick up the gears a bit, the Glycerin 22 I think is a more potent choice. It will definitely suit fans of lower profile shoes much more. They feel more compact, nimble, more agile and overall snappier, and that makes them, I think, a much more versatile option. And as I said, I find the Glycerin 22 soft enough for my easy miles too, though I do like a more connected ride even on the slower miles. But if you're after a shoe that packs a bit more range, I think the Glycerin 22 offers the better all-round ride and value, and it's probably the better bet. So that is the one that I would pick.
This is a pretty close one for me. Like I said at the start, neither is exactly the kind of shoe that I'd be rushing to add to my own rotation, but I do think they are shoes that are really good at their job. Good workhorse trainers that have a lot of comfort, a little bit of versatility, but in general are just there to pick up a lot of easy and long runs while offering a lot of protection and stability in a neutral shoe. So overall, my ride preference is the Asics. I think I enjoy it slightly more, notwithstanding the slightly slappy feel you get from that outsole at times. I do think it's a really comfortable shoe. I like the way it transitions a bit more than the Brooks with its slightly higher drop. And while maybe the Brooks' foam is a little bit better, I think it's still not good enough that really makes a big difference in terms of how I'd use the shoe. I don't think it's a high performance foam that I'd go and use for, lots of fast running or anything like that. So really it's all about the comfort, and I do think the Asics has a little bit more of that for me, and I like the way it rolls through from heel to toe. So I'd just give it to the Asics, but it's pretty close all round. I'd say you're going to be well set with either shoe. And if you like previous models within the Glycerin or Nimbus lineups, I'd probably just stick with those. They do live up to the standards of their lines, like I say.
So my verdict on these two shoes is they're pretty similar for a lot of reasons. I think they're basically designed for the same thing, those sort of easier daily runs where you just want a good bit of cushioning. They're both pretty balanced shoes, you get a good bit of stability in both of them. I think the Glycerin 22 is better all round for if you want a bit of everything. So you just has a nicer, smoother action for running in. It's not neither of them are versatile shoes, but I just find it easier to run longer in the Brooks Glycerin 22. Also, I would say that the stability elements of the Glycerin 22 are better as well. So it does feel like a bit more of a stable shoe, probably because feels like it's a bit closer to the ground, so you're getting a bit more feel for it. But overall, I think it really comes down to your style of running. The Gel-Nimbus 27 doesn't necessarily work very well for me. For some people, it might work better based on your gait. So for me, I'm going to go for the Glycerin 22 all the way. I just think it's better value, and I think it's a more solid shoe all round.
That's a comparison of the Asics Gel-Nimbus 27 and the Brooks Glycerin 22. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Please do like and subscribe, ring the bell, and we'll see you next time.